Boundaries. The topic of boundaries has come up quite a lot recently, so I thought I would touch on the topic of boundaries and say hello. A person, a counselling client in the last couple of days, was talking about her experience with boundaries, and I thought it was an ideal topic to bring up because the interesting thing about boundaries is that boundaries are there to control our behaviour, for us to create the sacred space in which we can be ourselves, self-realise, feel comfort within our space, and also to protect ourselves. Boundaries are not there to control the behaviour of another person. They are not a fence to prevent others from coming in. They are more a line in the sand, a line in the sand in order to remind us who we truly are regarding our values, our virtues, and our chosen beliefs. Through life, we may wish to change the behaviour of another, the beliefs of another. At times, we can naturally want another to emulate, to reflect our own values and beliefs. We have no control over the values and beliefs of another person. Part of the journey of peace, resilience, tranquility is understanding we have no control over the behaviour of another person. And at times, I find when I counsel, a client will continually refer back to saying words such as he should, or she should, or I wanted to show them. We are not able to show anyone anything because other people see the world through their narrative, through the lens of their experience. And we see the world through the lens of our experience. We can endeavour to communicate a particular message. We can endeavour to present ourselves in a particular way. And perhaps our smile or our behaviour may be perceived in a reasonable way according to the way we would like it to be perceived or presented. But we absolutely cannot dictate or define how others choose to see us. Sometimes we can lay the best planned ideas, plans, attempts to sow seeds or to give out a particular message, and that message is not read, not seen. I talk about the picture, if you imagine a picture of a rose, a beautiful rose growing out of a garbage pile, and the garbage pile looks horrible and smells rancid. The rose, however, is beautiful and smells magnificent. We can choose what to focus on. We can choose what to see in the picture, and we can filter out what we don't wish to see. The lens of what we see always carries filters of how we internalize experience. None of us sees the same garbage pile and the same rose. Each of us sees a different garbage pile and a different rows. That is the beauty of life. That is the complexity of life. At times we may sincerely attempt to communicate something to somebody and they hear something entirely different. That is life. That is part of the colour and complexity of life. Our values, our virtues affect what we see. Nothing we see is set in stone. Memory is not set in stone. Memory is fluid. We can choose to remember a particular event, let's say an occasion, and we can choose to focus on the happy parts of the occasion, or perhaps there were frustrating components. We can choose to focus on the frustration of the event or the frustrating moments of the event. The word choice is not as simple as the notion of choosing to turn on a light switch. Choice is learned. Choice is socialized. Choice is affected by filters, demographics, and how we were brought up. Choice can be affected by intergenerational trauma as well. So it seems it's all quite complex, but it's not impossible. We can work through it one step at a time. It comes back to the foundation that we are responsible for ourselves, and this responsibility is a practice, it's a skill. We learn it. And the way we learn is affected by the environment around us. We are intrinsically social. We are social animals. We are biologically social. And with this biology, we demonstrate features of our ego, the need to be seen, the need to belong, the need to be aesthetically attractive to our community, the need to be liked, the need to people please comes down to our ego. Our ego is that part of us that wants to be seen socially. As animals, we all have an ego, and that ego cannot be denied. It can be adjusted, it can be redirected, it can be reframed. It cannot be denied because it is part of us hormonally, it's part of us biologically, it's part of us innately. And then we have a conscious self away from the madding crowds, a sense of self that is who we are away from others. Being our conscious self is an absolute practice. There is a deep core need in each of us to reach out to those around us and to want to be included, accepted, liked. Our conscious self is where our intuitive self sits, lives. In order for us to know our intuitive self, we need to step away from our ego, yet we are ego. So it is a careful balance. It is a waltz between the conscious self and the egoic self. The egoic self is essential for attachment, and in order for us to be human, attachment is healthy. Attachment, codependency, is part of who we are. The notion that we are self-made, the notion of self-made man, the notion of being detached, the notion of not needing others is false. Is false. Healthy attachment is part of being human, is part of being social. Codependency is part of being mentally well, part of well-being. It's about monitoring the intensity and the concentration of attachment and how that attachment serves the two people or the various people involved in a relationship. How the codependency serves the relationship and how it can possibly compromise the relationship. And walking the dance, or rather dancing the dance, keeping the whole construct in balance. The complexity of life. And as we walk through this complexity, we remind ourselves that we are the thinkers and we are the feelers, and we are cautious about the words we use, the phrases we use. We move away from labeling or describing with one or two words. When we label or describe, we reduce a person or a relationship to one word, two words, and we take away from the colour and complexity of that relationship. We also reduce our ability to unpack and think through a situation. As soon as we call something or someone toxic, we reduce so many experiences, so many attributes, thoughts, happenings to one word. So we're effectively pruning our brain, or pruning unnecessarily our ability to unpack. When we evaluate any relationship or any event, we describe each part of that event as factually as possible, almost like a counsellor writing case notes, in order that we can move to a vantage point of observing what has occurred, spectating, being the spectator over what has occurred. If we diagnose, in most situations, if we diagnose or label, we pin one word on an experience. There's a really good TED talk called Single Story. I just love, and I promote it all the time. I really encourage you to watch it. It's absolutely magnificent. And it talks about our brain, or our social egoic brain, likes to minimize. It likes to order and it likes to validate. And that need to validate reduces our ability to see potential and to see the unlimited opportunity in life. We may enjoy a particular Instagram post or reel, and it may say something incredibly motivating, and that's okay, as long as we don't lock ourselves in the cage of a motto or the cage of a quote. Instead, we use that quote to springboard us to lateral ways of thinking. When we describe our experiences, it is constructive not to use the word my. My grief, my trauma, my childhood. I'm not saying don't use the word as an absolute, my, I'm talking about my. But when we use the word my, we teach ourselves that we own the grief, or we own what we call the trauma, rather than seeing the trauma or the grief as an experience we feel. As soon as we say we own it, my trust issues, for example, when we own it, we give it a life all on its own. And we organically allow that life to grow. Instead of saying my trauma, perhaps say I experienced. When we see that we've experienced something, we can choose to see it differently. When we own it, it becomes part of us, like a limpet, a limpet on a rock attached, and when you try and pry that limpet off and it won't come off. We are not our experiences. We feel our experiences. Who is the one doing the feeling? We are. We can learn to redirect our feelings, reframe, change our feelings. It's not easy. It is not easy. It is possible. I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for following me on Patreon. Those of you who follow me on Patreon, you make this content possible. Thank you for those of you who subscribe to my subscriber-only Apple podcast, Sleep Meditation with Lauren Ostrowski Fenton. Thank you. Thank you to those of you who use my counselling service, which you can book at Simply Book Me. The website Simply Book Me. My name, Lauren Ostrowski Fenton. Life is not easy. As egoic souls, we want permanence. In the universe, there is no permanence. So we feel pain, suffering, because everything changes. We can learn, we can practice to feel peace, no matter the mayhem all around. You can do it. Love you all. Thank you so much for subscribing to my YouTube channel. You are okay. You will be okay. Life is okay. And I wish you well.